So, time for some chanting, and it's the last evening chanting of this retreat. So it's time to give it everything you've got. Yoso bhagavavan sama sambuddho swakatoyena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yasa bhagavato sawaka sangho tamayam bhagavantam sadammam sasangam imehi sakare yataraham aropitehi abhipujayama sadhana bhante bhagava suchira parinubhutopi Pachima janatanukampamanasat ime sakare dugatapana karapute patiganhatu Dhammakam digavatam hitaya sukhaya araham sama sambuddho bhagavat buddham bhagavantam abhivademi Swakato bhagavata dhammo dhammam namasami Supatipanno bhagavato sawaka sangho sangham namami Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa iti piso bhagava araha sama sambuddho Vichacharana sampanno sugato lokavidut Anuttaro Purisadhammasarati Satta Deva Manusanam Buddho Bhagavat Tamaham Bhagavantam Abhipujayami Tamaham Bhagavantam Sirasa Namami Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Wakaliko Ehipasiko Opanahiko Pachatam Veditapo when you heed Tamaham Dhammam Abhipujayami Tamaham Dhammam Sivasanamami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ujjapatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Nyayapatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Samicchipatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yadidam Chattari Purisayukani Atta Purisa Pukkalap Esa Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ahuneyo Bahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaneyo Anuttaram Punya Ketam Lokasat Tamaham Sangam Abhipujayami Tamaham Sangam Sirasanamami. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be happy, Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent. All right. And the questions are probably on their way. Before we start the questions, can I ask how many people do not know who I am? Really? Me too. Okay. All right. So I'll say a little bit about myself so that you know a little bit about me. Great. Thank you very much. There's lots of questions. And there might be some which ask me about myself, so I'll just be brief. But firstly, thank you so much, not for giving me the opportunity, but for giving Ajahn Brahm the opportunity to have a rest. That was really the idea behind this. And whether this is beneficial for you or not is one thing. I hope it will be. But the main thing was to give Ajahn Brahm a rest. He's been incredibly busy since he got back from England just about a week ago, actually. Maybe almost 2 weeks now. I think it was about Tuesday, so about 10 days. And as you know about Ajahn, he just gives and he gives and he gives. And he keeps giving. And sometimes he's tired, but he doesn't want to say it. But those close to him can see it. And so I wanted to give him that opportunity to have a rest. So he's in a very good mood this evening. So I'm having a rest tonight. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for your sacrifice and kindness towards the teacher, who we all have tremendous gratitude towards. So yeah, my name is Canda, and that name was given to me by my Burmese teacher. I ordained in Myanmar in 2006, and that was after about 10 years of practice in the Goenka Vipassana tradition, which comes from Myanmar, and had travelled to India with Goenka. And we used to do these 10-day retreats and longer, which were very intensive, and gave a lot of insight into things like impermanence. But we're very strict, which was good for me at a young age. I felt like, yeah, I want to go inside, I want to figure out what's going on and how this mind and body works. And it was great for me. And because of that, I wanted to ordain. So for 10 years, I looked for an opportunity to take the robes, to renounce, because it became a natural inclination through the practice that I just wasn't so interested in the things the world had to offer. And I just wanted to keep going inside and understanding more and more about my mind, and also more and more about how deep this practice could go. It's like, well, it's gone this far, let me take it further, let me see, how far I can take it in this life. And I don't know, maybe from some past life, but I felt that I had an opportunity that was very rare. And I felt that I could give this one life to this practice, come what may. Maybe I get enlightened, maybe I don't, but I just give this life. And maybe I give this life to ordaining if I get the chance. So finally I got the chance in Myanmar to ordain as an 8-precept nun with a very powerful special teacher who was similar to Ajahn Brahm in terms of compassion and wisdom and a nurture, a kind of nurture for me in my early years of monastic life. But after about 4 years there, I got really ill and I had to leave. And it was quite devastating for me because I didn't know where to go and how to take leave. Luckily, just before that happened, I picked up this CD that some English monk had given me actually it was an Indian monk living in England. And I always feel so grateful to this monk because I left it in my kuti in Burma for months and I thought, I don't want to listen to these white monks, these Western monks. They're not the real thing, They just kind of talk about how to live in harmony and how to have a happy life, but they don't talk about enlightenment, And I want the real thing. I've been living in Asia now for like 15 years. I want the real thing. So, because I didn't say I practiced in India before that for about 10 years. But one day I thought, let's just listen, because it's in my own language and maybe it's, there's something different there. And I played this talk and it was the best talk I ever heard on that subject. I thought, wow, this was really brilliant. And then I played the next talk and the first thing the teacher said was, sometimes I like to talk about jhanas and enlightenment, but today I'm going to talk about meditation off the cushion. And as soon as he said, sometimes I usually talk about jhanas and enlightenment, my ears were like, woo, oh, really? And then he gave the best talk I've ever heard about how to integrate the practice with the everyday life and how to be kind and look after each other and not just meditate, but really serve. And I just had the goosebumps, like Piti Sukha. And guess who this teacher was, right? Ajahn Brahm. So I was like, who is this person? How do I find them? And day after day I used to listen to these talks in the evening and I just felt like I have to go. I have to go and find this teacher and basically ask him to look after me for the rest of my monastic life. So around 2010 I got to meet him in Germany after I left Burma. 2012 I came to Australia and I stayed here for about 3 or 4 years and joined the Dhammasara nuns community before he asked me to go back to England and start a monastery in England. That was in the end of 2015, and for the last 9 years that's what I've been doing. In fact, that's now nearly 10 years. So for the last 9 or 10 years I've been, apart from my teacher physically, but I spend every Rains retreat here. So this is the start of the Rains retreat, that's why I'm here. And just in the last year and a half we actually got a monastery, a nice size, beautiful monastery. It's on the board out there if you want to have a look. It's actually a 5-bedroom house, but it's in a beautiful grounds and it's got really big rooms, not like this big, not like 60 people, but you can get like 25 people for the dana and another room with about the same capacity for meditation. So 2 separate rooms downstairs. Very peaceful area. And this year I finally have my first trainees who want to be anonymous, but there they are. They're not on the camera, but there they are. And it's the first time women have had a chance in England to take the training towards full ordination. So the reason I kind of said yes to that was because Ajahn Brahm asked me, And it felt like a little thing I could do to serve him, to pay my gratitude back to him. And although it was very difficult living in England away from Sangha, the only bhikkhuni, all the rest, it was really very difficult. He's had me on the phone, on Skype, just crying for a whole hour, like it's so difficult, I can't continue. And he's kept me going like through 9 years, you know, not always crying, right? Otherwise, I don't know. But there's a lot of ups and downs, but a lot of richness and meaning in that. And so that's where we are now. So that is lots about myself, but I thought it's polite really to tell you who I am before I start to share something with you about the Dhamma. So I hope that there can be something useful in my answering of your questions. And if not, please raise your hand and complain. Okay, ask again, or we might have time at the end. I'm not going to do like Ajahn Brahm with stories, because I just don't have so many stories, right? I'm not so old yet. So I might not have so many stories, but my aim is to get through the questions, because it's your last evening. I see there are some questions here, probably from yesterday. What I'd prefer to do, because I know people's questions change day by day, so if we have time at the end, you can raise your hand and we can answer any last questions you might have. Does that sound good? All right. Da, da, da. And my practice is okay. It's not like Ajahn Brahm's. You asked last night, like, is there anyone with the same level of practice with as Ajahn Brahm? Possibly not, you know, possibly somewhere. But what I would have added to that question is that we're all in training, so everyone has the potential. We're on the path. And I think we're going to get there. You know, people who are committed to the practice, whether we're in robes or not, we're going to get there. So that's my faith. So I'll do my best with the questions. Okay. Is it normal to see colours during meditation? It actually looks like colons. So it's a C-O-L-O, and then there's an R that looks like an N. But yes, anyway, it would be a bit strange to see colons. I saw flickers of white and orange light. Hopefully I was not hallucinating. Thank you. So every question that starts with, is it normal? The answer is yes, because your minds are normal, and the mind all does the same thing. Everybody's mind does the same thing. And generally speaking, you start to see the lights in the mind. We interpret this as lights. We start to see something that we interpret as lights when the mind becomes more peaceful. Sometimes we can interpret peace as like a colour, sometimes as a light, sometimes as a sound, or even a smell. But the characteristic of the lights that arise in meditation is they're usually very beautiful and very unusual in their depth of colour and their beauty. So the flickers are what we call the beginnings of these lights. So you can call them nimittas if you want to. The nimittas that are really useful to take you deeper in meditation are when the lights become very, very strong and very centralized. So they start to center in the mind and become stable and powerful and strong and very, very beautiful, very, very joyful and very peaceful as well. But it starts with these flickers sometimes. Sometimes it can be kind of like fireworks. Sometimes it can be kind of like just a star, and sometimes very fast, like sometimes it just comes and goes. Sometimes it might come from one side, or it might come in the middle, or all kinds of different things can happen. But the main thing at this point, when it's the flickers, is just to trust in the process. Try not to get too excited or too afraid, and just carry on with what you've been doing. You've been letting go. You've been, happy with the breath. You've been enjoying the breath, and it may be that the breath is starting to fade, the body is starting to disappear, and the mind is brightening. So just stay steady with it when this happens, and don't be afraid. So it's a good sign. It's a good sign that the mind is starting to brighten up and become joyful and become peaceful. So very good. See, Ajahn said yesterday, these things happen towards the end. So well done. Okay, 2 questions in one. This is double trouble. Okay, number 1. Reinstate Bhikkhuni lineage was a controversial agenda. What has inspired Ajahn to support it all the way? So I don't know if this was for Ajahn Brahm, but I can answer on his behalf, and I can also answer from my own perspective, which is basically the same. So the idea of something being controversial is interesting because nothing is innately and inherently controversial. It's human beings that make a controversy of things, right? Actually doing this is an incredible thing. Whether you think it's incredible or not, it's kind of a personal thing, right? So one person will say it's a good thing, another person will say it's a questionable thing. Actually, there's no controversy inherent in doing this. The controversy is in the people having disagreements. So that's one point I'd like to make. The word reinstating is a little bit misleading because there's a question mark around whether the Bhikkhuni lineage ever really died out anyway. It seems to me more likely that the Bhikkhuni lineage continued in the Mahayana tradition, and most probably in other countries like Myanmar and Thailand and India, perhaps people were practicing quietly somewhere in the forest. It's highly unlikely that this wasn't happening, in my perspective. And there has been evidence that there were Bhikkhuni lineages in places like Myanmar until about 1,000 years ago. And maybe earlier than that as well. I think there's more and more evidence being collected. But the main thing that inspired Ajahn and inspires all of us to do this, I think, is our understanding of what the Buddha really intended when he first started teaching the Dhamma. And he said very clearly to Mara, who wanted to know when he would pass away, he said, I will not pass away until there is a very strong lineage of bhikkhunis, of bhikkhus, of lay women and of lay men. And that was what he called the fourfold assembly, but it was meant to include everybody. So this was the Buddha's way, in his words in those days, of saying the need to be representatives who are enlightened, who are well versed in the Dhamma, who are well established in the Dhamma, from every walk of life, from every gender, from every community, and only then can the Dhamma last and will the Dhamma continue for a very long time. So only then he was willing to actually pass into parinibbana. So this was his intention from the very beginning, and I think anybody who reads the suttas, who loves the Dhamma, and also who knows the benefits of monastic life, which Ajahn clearly does, of course they want to open that opportunity or stop that opportunity from being closed to anyone at all, right? So firstly, he's experienced the benefits of monastic life. Secondly, he knows what the Buddha's intentions were. And thirdly, I guess, his compassion, right? So with Ajahn Brahm, my understanding is that, I suppose with all of us to a degree, but I think sometimes things can seem conceptual, especially if we're a monk and we don't really know other women, or we haven't really met bhikkhunis or women struggling to ordain. We don't really know their struggles. And when he actually met these 4 women that were really sincere and that had been practicing for a very long time and said, this is why bhikkhuni ordination is important to us, he understood, he listened, and he had compassion, and he realized, yeah, if they want to take the bhikkhuni ordination, of course. How would he have felt if he went over to Thailand and Ajahn Chah would have said, sorry, you're the wrong gender. Go back to England. It's not for you. It would have been devastating, right? Wouldn't it? And if every monastery he would have been to would have said, no, sorry, you're the wrong gender, you're the wrong race, you're the wrong size, whatever they would have said. So this is why he supports it. And I think his dedication really to serving the Sangha and to serving all living beings is what has sustained his commitment to supporting bhikkhunis all this time. It's the same reason he keeps teaching, right? And Ajahn Brahm also really believes in renunciation, in the power of renunciation to deepen the practice. So he has immense respect for the Sangha, even for Sangha members who might not observe the Vinaya as strictly as we do here. You know, they might be from the Mahayana tradition, they might make, you know, adaptations, or they might use money even, but he has always said to me that as long as he sees the robes, he feels respect, because there's a certain wisdom that understands the importance of renunciation there. So I think that's one very important thing. And interestingly, just to add on to that, I'm going to go over time too, aren't I? I've noticed that the people who have practiced deeply and who are also scholars who've really studied the suttas tend to support bhikkhuni ordination. So I would include in that Bhante Sujato, Ajahn Brahmali, Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's translated all the suttas, and also Bhante Analayo. Now these are really big-time famous scholar monks in the world today. There are nuns too, like Venerable Dhammadinna, she's amazing, Bhikkhuni Dhammadinna. And most people who, read the suttas understand why bhikkhuni ordination is important. Second one, what is the prerequisite or requirement to become a bhikkhuni? I feel like saying Ajahn Brahm's answer here. That you're breathing. That's really nice, isn't it? And I guess that you're female. Or you identify as a woman. So the prerequisite, I would say more seriously, just a natural inclination, like a point in the practice that you come to that you realize renunciation is going to help. Renunciation is the natural next step. It feels like that's all I want to do. And it just feels like the path is calling me this way. I would say that's a very, very strong factor, because what I've realized, even in my role now that I'm opening up opportunities to train women, is that I don't really choose who comes. I mean, to a degree, I can tell if someone's got the determination, the sincerity or not. But actually, I'm sort of there to just facilitate it. And if they have that aspiration, it becomes obvious to me. So I think it will become obvious to you as well. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure that's the same handwriting. I'm not looking. Okay. Dear Canda, yes, you did spell my name correctly. What has inspired me to take the bhikkhuni route? Is there any age limit to become a bhikkhuni? I heard in some traditions there are age limits. Thank you. Okay, so I think I described my routine through the practice, through a natural kind of lessening of interest in the world, and also increasing happiness in my practice, increasing interest, fascination, I would say, and just a sense of momentum that I didn't want to stop. The bhikkhuni ordination is interesting because, as I mentioned, I took ordination in Burma because that was where my tradition came from. And I just took the ordination that was available. I didn't really think, is it full ordination? Is it half ordination? For me, it was 100% renunciation from the heart. So I didn't really think I need the full ordination until later when I realized it was available. And Ajahn Brahm told me it was available. There were bhikkhunis practicing in Perth, and my heart leapt. I just thought, well, of course, if this is possible, of course I would do it. Why wouldn't you? Why would any monk say, oh, I think I'll just ordain as a novice or just on 8 precepts? You just do it, you just take on the full training that the Buddha laid down. So I guess my increased faith in the practice, that enlightenment is possible, and in the Buddha's teachings, and the fact he gave us this as our inheritance I was fortunate that the opportunity opened up. Yeah, incredibly fortunate. So that was one thing. And I must say Ajahn Brahm as well, because until then I hadn't really seen the significance, but because I already had faith in him as a teacher from the teachings I'd heard, I thought, well, if he says you should do it, then of course it must be something. There must be a reason. So in a sense, he inspired me to do that, to go all the way. And is there any age limit? So the thing is, ideologically, there is no age limit. The Buddha didn't say, okay, you can do it up until a certain age. But in reality, because we're starting new communities in Western countries or in non-Buddhist countries, there's a lot of hard work to be done in the beginning. And the experience of a lot of people who've trained monastics is that it's easier to train people when they're younger than when they're older, simply because we get set in ingrained patterns and habits, and we tend to lose our energy to some extent. So generally speaking, it's good to be not too young, not too old, whatever that might mean. But on the other hand, there's always a case by case. So there was a nun at Dhammasara who was about, I think, over 70 by the time she took the ordination, and that was because she'd been serving for many, many years, and the monastery was well equipped enough, well supported enough to be able to take an older person. She actually is, by the way, one of the strongest nuns in that community physically as well. But it depends on the place. So for me at the moment, because I work really, really hard, like around the clock, running the whole project and the trust, the charity, and doing all the teaching, it's better if I have people who can help me. So it's not only age specific, but it's helpful if you have a new generation of people who can continue as well after me. So if I'm, already 50 now, I take on someone who's 70, then I'm going to have to look after them in their old age. So how am I going to continue to run the monastery? It's going to be almost impossible. So it's a logistical thing, I would say, not an ideological thing. Yeah. So, this is a big list. It feels like the world is on fire today. There are wars going on. Birth rates are declining. Dating is a mess. Is that true? That's an easy one to solve, isn't it? Loneliness is rampant. Addictions are on the rise. Suicide rates are going up. Undependable world leaders. Housing prices increase dramatically. The list goes on. It's becoming more and more difficult to live in the world as a young person, as the old generation did. More competition, less or inadequate resources. How is one to navigate the modern world? How does Buddhism or spirituality play into this? Big question, really big question, and I completely agree with a lot of it, and yet, on the one hand, this is really true, right? And you can add to the list. On the other hand, there's also a whole lot of good. And I think it's really important not to lose sight of the good. So the immediate thing that comes to mind for me is one way to deal with this, because we're hearing much more about all the terrible things happening in the world, which, by the way, did happen in the past. I do think we've got the added issues of, obviously, the climate crisis, the things we've done to this planet and her climate, her resources, this horrible widening gap between the rich and the poor. Totally corrupt leaders, which have always been there, actually. We just get a surprise when it's happening in, some big country. But this has been going on in other countries as long as humanity began. So it's really, really important, more than ever, to try and rejoice in the beauty in the world. Try and rejoice in the fact that there are people living selfless lives. I don't know, just to take a kind of random survey of the people in the room, what kind of jobs do you have? Just shout out a few jobs, IT? Anything else? Engineer?
Baker.
Huh?
A baker.
A baker? Wow, I'm coming to you. Anyone in the healthcare profession? Social worker. Okay, so these are brilliant things to be doing. So there are people doing really good, wholesome livelihoods in this world, right? Spending all their life on trying to serve other people and make this world run better. Whether it's through food, whether it's through healthcare, whether it's through helping us use our IT systems properly and creating more and more technology to help things like spreading the Dhamma. How many people watch the Dhamma on YouTube and, live stream? So many wonderful things that people do, and I think for me it's really important to remember that. When I start thinking about that, I start thinking of more and more people. So there's a genocide going on in Gaza, let's be honest. But imagine the people who are going over there like barefoot doctors or relief aid workers, and they're risking their life. And I've told this story before, but I read about it, and there was one person, I think they were Muslim, I'm not sure from which country, from Canada or somewhere, and they said, bombs are falling all around, there's no medical equipment, there's barely anything we can do to help people, but until there are people here to help, I'm not leaving. We're not leaving this place. And it just makes you want to cry, because it's almost as though the more evil there is, the more good comes through. You know, sometimes that is what brings people together, what pulls people together. And we have to do that as a global community. We have to pull together in these times and really try not to start thinking in terms of them and us, you know, self and other, that group, those people, because they're all individuals. So we really have to see the common humanity and try and have also compassion for the people who are really, really sick and they're in leadership roles and they're not well. They're really mentally unwell, right? So have compassion for them. The Buddha said, you know, they're like a sick person who cannot be helped. They're far away from a doctor, they're far away from an attendant, they're far away from food and drink and all the things they need. So, you know, have compassion for these people. They're just like us, but they've had some trauma in their life, they've had some difficult circumstances. So make sure you yourself are healthy and see how you can serve your community. Really try not to get disheartened. There is a lot of meaning in the world, and sometimes even suffering can give us a sense of meaning, you know, because it requires an appropriate response. And that response is the 3 right intentions of kindness and compassion and letting go, or if you like, giving to others, letting go of self-concern and thinking of us. So these are some tips I'd like to share. So don't lose hope. There's a lot of good you can do, but you have to rejoice in it. You have to remember the things you do, the contributions you make. And you are not going to save the world yourself, but as a society, we all do our bit. Yeah? Okay, I want to ask from the delightful discourse, number 30. Was it number 30? Pasadika Sutta in the Digha Nikaya. Does the Buddha exist after death? And so ... May I say that our purpose is not to be born again? May I say the Buddha does not exist, but only his teaching exists? Thank you. Yeah, so in a sense, the Buddha, of course, is in a way a convention. There's no real person called the Buddha. The Buddha just means the awakened one, right? And after parinibbana, the khandas cease. So what we take to be a Buddha is basically the 5 khandas, right, that we all have. So it's the body, the feelings, the perception, the will, and the consciousness. That's what all of us are, including a Buddha. So what happens after parinibbana? The 5 khandas cease. The reason that sutta says the Buddha does not exist, he doesn't exist nor not exist, is because the Buddha is a convention. It isn't really true in the first place. Right? So in that sutta, I think the Buddha says, well, is it that sutta, or the Yamaka Sutta, where the Buddha says, if what is here now cannot be taken as true and actual in this very life, then how can we say that they exist or don't exist after death? And that's what Ajahn Brahm meant when he said something like, you know, can you actually see the Buddha now? Can the Buddha actually, you know, even in the Buddha's life, could you actually see the Buddha? The Buddha said, one who sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha, one who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. So that's the point here. Like, the Buddha as a kind of person is just a convention. It's actually, we're taking him to be something he's not. Does that make sense? Yeah? So yeah, the purpose is to end suffering. It's not to end ourselves, it's not to annihilate anything, because there's nothing there really anyway to annihilate. So we don't have to have self-hatred or self-love or any of that. We just have to have compassion for this process. And compassion for this process means allowing things to cease. Just like you do in meditation, you know, you have compassion for yourself, so you sit down and you let things settle, you let the mind settle, you let the body start to cease. You let the breath start to cease, and you start to see it's more happiness, it's more peace when things fade. So it's the same thing. We just let more and more cease, and suffering ends. Yeah. Chanda, when fear becomes too strong, I find myself choosing the more comfortable and familiar path, or avoid creating situations that frighten me, rather than facing what feels like growth. How can I see this clearly and understand whether it's truly the wise way? That's a great question, yeah. And I've seen here that you use the word too strong. So it can be that sometimes fear is overwhelming for us, and at that time it's really compassionate to just take a few steps back. So don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed, right? So you can still explore fear and find ways to be with fear and to be kind to fear bit by bit by bit, but not all at once. But the other thing is that sometimes we label fear as being too strong because we're scared of it, right? So we think it's too much. We think we can't cope with it, when actually it's okay. You know, I mean, I've actually had so much fear at times that it's turned into like anxiety and even anxiety attacks. I only had those actually for the first time in my life. I think one I had about 2012 and then another one in 2022 when something started to go wrong in our trust, in our committee in England, and I thought I might lose this whole project, and this is my life's work, and this is like my monastic life, and you know, and it was really freaky. And I had these really strong kind of what I think was panic attacks. Sometimes it felt like things were caving in on me. Sometimes it was like actually trembling, you know. And it was really scary, and I had to find different ways to work with it. Sometimes you need to come out of the fear response. You need to just take a walk, look at the nature, be with a friend, sit down, have a cup of tea, have a hug. This regulates the nervous system. Or do what Ajahn Brahm suggests, you know, locate it in your body. This is if it's not so intense. And then just kind of stroke your body, massage it, you know, be kind to it. That's another way. Other times we might be able to continue meditating, but instead of continuing with the breath, or maybe you got really deep and you even got an nimitta and then that vanished when the fear arose, don't worry about it. Just actually stay with that feeling of fear and learn to have a really wise, compassionate attitude towards it. Like, hello fear, how are you today? Can I be your friend? You know? And actually kind of treat that fear like it's a little child who's afraid and who wants a bit of comfort. And really bring it in, you know, see if you can kind of connect with this other part of you that's wise, compassionate and warm. And then there's this little creature. You can kind of imagine it like a little being that's all shaking and all cold. And you just kind of hold it for a while, but not for too long, just for long enough. So different ways. But please don't judge yourself, you know, because we can't go too far too soon. And it may be growth, but it's only really growth if you go gradually and if you have this wise response. So just learn to be with fear bit by bit in different ways. And you can be creative, you know. You can have all kinds of different imagery and ways of holding it, ways of being in your body or not. Another thing, if you can't be in your body but you don't want to be completely outside, is to kind of imagine your body a bit bigger. So the fear's there, you've got a kind of butterflies or anxiety, but you feel also the outside of the body, like the skin and the surrounding, and you know, fill it up with a feeling of warmth. That can help as well. So you make a bigger container for the fear. Yeah, you don't have to do it all on your own. You fill that space with kindness. Or you can imagine you're with Ajahn Brahm or with someone you trust. This is really nice. There's been meditations when I've actually imagined that he's got my back, literally got my back. And I've got a cushion behind me and it's like Ajahn just got my back, you know. That's really nice. I don't know, it works for me. Sometimes you can be creative. Okay, I accidentally trampled upon an insect and killed it. Can I do some chanting for the insect? Yes, why not? You can totally do some chanting. It happens, and I was telling my Anagarikas, you know, it's going to happen while you're here that you're going to tread on a millipede. It's just very difficult not to. Or it's in the door. Or today actually, I was washing some tea towels and it was in the tea towels and I saw it floating. And then I took it out and it wasn't very happy. It was alive, but it had got all the soap powder, so I washed it and then it was... Ooh. But eventually it was okay. But sometimes I just say, oh, you know, I apologize and I say, may you be happy, may you be well, may you get a good rebirth. It's died at Jhana Grove. right? So it's going to get a good rebirth. You didn't mean to kill it. So yes, you can do some chanting for the insect or speak to it or whatever you want. Is there any chanting for a dying pet so it will be reborn in a higher realm as a human? Is there any chanting for a dying pet? I'm not quite sure about that. I always go to loving kindness. And if you don't want to do the whole loving kindness, you could try the suffusion with divine abidings. Do you know that? There's you can just do one verse or something like, I will abide with a heart of loving kindness. Likewise, I will abide, pervading one quarter with a heart imbued with loving kindness. Likewise, the second, the third, the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world with a heart of loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. So this spreads loving kindness in all directions. So that's also a very nice chant that you could do. And if you just wish that creature a higher rebirth, or you share your merit with that creature during your meditation or any time during the day, then that can really, really help. We have a lot of merit, You've just been on a retreat for 9 days. You've got tons of merit, so now's the chance to help those little beings get a good rebirth. What is the difference between silent and guided meditation? One is silent and one is guided. Yeah, that's right. If we can sit under silent meditation, then who should take guided one instead? Lastly, is it better to be undergoing the silent one in order to get jhana? Ha ha ha. Well, if we do anything in order to get jhana, we're likely not to succeed. So we shouldn't aim for that as such. But we should more work with our own mind. So work with your mind from time to time. There's no absolutely right way. Sometimes in the Buddha's day, people got enlightened during his discourse. So it's possible to get enlightened while you're listening to a talk. And one of the things Ajahn Brahm told me is that it's possible, because I teach a lot now, he said it's possible you can get enlightened while you're giving a talk, while you're teaching the Dhamma. And there's actually a sutta where a monk does that, because he thinks he's fully enlightened. Is it that he thinks he is? Or the other monks question him and try and find out how enlightened he is. And he talks about his own stage of enlightenment and what he understands so far. And then they ask him some more questions, and he starts to speak about further stages on the path, because he knows it intellectually, and he starts to speak about these other stages, and he actually breaks through at that time. He starts to talk about the other fetters that need to be abandoned, and it happens while he's talking about it. So really it depends on you from time to time. Don't force yourself to do one or the other. Sometimes Ajahn Brahm says a guided meditation is like having the driving instructor next to you. But for me, it's sometimes also that I just want to relax and I want someone else to do the work. Because maybe my mind is too busy or it's starting to get to do too much and I want someone else to just talk and just let me relax. And then at the end of that, I continue. So you can do a bit of everything. If you do too much guided meditation, then of course you're not allowing the mind to become quiet. But to do a little bit of it from time to time is really good. And it can keep you on track. Because we get into our bad habits, we get into too much force and, too much seriousness about my enlightenment, my jhana. And then you hear Ajahn Brahm go, relax, just be peaceful. Oh, so easy. So do a bit of both, I would say. Yeah. I actually did a long retreat here several years ago in the beautiful retreat kuti, actually, which was a total honour and privilege, in the valley on its own. And I asked Ajahn Brahm, what should I be doing? Maybe more this, maybe more that. He said, ask your mind what it wants to do. So I started doing that. And I started including the body and the mind and even the breath and kind of talking to all of them. Okay, body, how are you doing? You all right? How about you, mind? Would you like to watch the breath? It sounds kind of funny. But the body, the mind, the breath, they know that, you're working with them. You're not kind of forcing them. You're not working against them or pushing them to be this way or that. Okay, how's your energy? Are the answers too long? A bit long? It's all right? All right, I said I'd try and finish them. It's okay, we keep going, see how far we go. Oh, welcome to Jhana Grove. Thank you for visiting us. Thank you. I love to be here. It's the best time of year. What is a typical day for the non? Is there any age limit to get renounced? I like that, getting renounced. Ajahn Brahm calls it getting lost. Nice. Well, it really, really depends. It's interesting. It's, in a way, probably almost as varied as saying what is a typical day for a layperson. It's so varied, depending on your particular role. So for me, it can depend also on the time of year. But in my monastery, I work really hard, so I get up, not always for the morning meditation, because I'm so tired and I work late at night. If I don't get up for the morning meditation, then I'm very happy that other people do, and I might meditate in my room, or I might try and sleep. And then we have our breakfast in silence, and then we have our work meeting for about half an hour, and a little bit of Dhamma inspiration to start the day. And then we do our service period during the morning. So the lay guests do theirs, the Anagarikas do theirs, and I usually do a lot of admin and answering emails and working on all sorts of things, the newsletter, the website, the events, organisation, blah, blah, blah. And then we have our lunch, and sometimes people bring food. Otherwise, the people in the monastery do the cooking with food that's been offered. And even people from overseas send groceries to us, which is amazing. So all our food comes from people pretty much outside. So whether it's sent as shopping or whether it's sent as actual cooked meals, depends day to day. And sometimes people come to bring the food. In that case, we do like a bit of a Dhamma reflection or some meditation, and then some chanting dedication. And then I might talk to them after lunch, you know, to help them in their life with whatever problem or meditation question they have. Then we have a silent time where we're like, let's not move, let's just stay in our rooms and rest or meditate or whatever we want to do. And then it's basically silence throughout the afternoon. So if I have time, I do some meditation. If I don't, then I'm busy also continuing to organize retreats or teach, etc. I do some online teaching as well, once a week, a sutta discussion and a metta meditation, and and then we have a silent day once a week where it's just retreat. So we don't really speak to each other. Somebody volunteers to do the cooking, somebody volunteers to do the washing up, and we just act as though we're alone. We don't speak, we just write little messages if we need something. And we listen to a talk by Ajahn Brahm from the Rains retreats talks from the early days, which is really powerful. And then, we meditate in the evening together for an hour, and then we go to bed. So, and then sometimes our teachers visit. So Ajahn Brahm was with us for 2 weeks, and we taught a retreat together online. And we travelled around a lot together, giving public talks. What else happens at the monastery? Gardening. Yeah, we do have some gardening to do. Yes. What else?
Maintenance things like
Yeah.
the new things which have been built.
Yeah, we've done some building. We actually had a company to do it, but we designed the little huts for meditation. We look around the monastery to make sure, the insulation's okay, the heating system's okay. So we do that as well. Yeah, we do lots of stuff. And I have to admit, I have a hobby now, which is planting plants. And Ajahn Brahm mentioned that just before I came here, the day before I was flying, I picked up these massive plant pots, huge ones, like with a flat bottom. And there were 2, and I picked up the top one, and the bottom one fell away, and it smashed on my toe. So now I have a really nice grey toe. And that's for my potted plant hobby. So this is some of what we do. But of course we also have retreat time. So usually once a year in the monastery we have like a silent period of maybe 10 days to 2 weeks. And then every year 3 months retreat. So yeah. And then Ajahn Brahm comes once a year as well for 2 weeks. But mainly what we do is we just try to live with kindness, whether we're speaking together, whether we're meditating together, whatever we're doing, we just try and cultivate these 3 right intentions and listen to the Dhamma, understand the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. So, yeah. What should we do if we're very interested in something drama and fiction? Love, drama and fiction, is that right? If we're interested in love, drama and fiction. Well, what do you mean, what should you do? I guess that's what you like to do. So, but maybe just keep coming to these retreats, because one thing that I noticed, I used to not like this stuff, but I used to love rock music, Led Zeppelin and all this brilliant stuff. I still think it's brilliant. I mean, I think it's fantastic music, but what it's probably not quite my thing now, but I mean, it's the last music I listened to, right? So before I kind of got into meditation. But what happened for me was that I was more interested in meditation, and then after my first retreat, I just really appreciated silence. And I also saw in my first retreat that even the rubbish music, not just Led Zeppelin, the really crap music would play around and around and around and around in my head. And it was like a torment. And that went on for almost 2 years on every retreat, because I was so musical and so much into music. It was like everything I'd ever heard was in there, playing like a jukebox. It was horrible. The lyrics, everything. And even if I just hear a song, it'd go round and round and round for, the next month or so. So the last thing I wanted to do was listen to any more, quite honestly. And it might be the same with you. It might be that when you're meditating, all this drama comes up from the books you've read and you start to get really sick of it, and you start to think, actually, it was better when I was just with my breath. And now if I read these books, it's just going to stir me up again. So you don't have to condemn yourself or kind of force yourself not to read this stuff, but you might just find that your taste changes over time, and you'll find something that's much more conducive to quietening the mind. So that's what I would imagine would happen. Yeah, don't worry too much about that. You're not breaking your precepts. But just have a look at how it affects your mind. Welcome to join us tonight. Thank you. In countries like UK, where Buddhism is not being well understood, is the teaching more different? I think you're an experienced meditator. Have you experienced any discrimination from the majority? Thank you. I would agree with you here. I would agree that generally Buddhism is not being well understood. Is the teaching more different, I think it says, or difficult? Is the teaching more difficult? Do you mean me teaching? Is it more difficult for me to teach, maybe? So, yeah, I do think Buddhism is not being greatly understood by the majority of people, partly because most people are not Buddhist, and also there's two very strong kind of wings of Buddhism. They're not really Buddhism. There's secular mindfulness, right, which kind of misses the point around ethics and around the purpose of the mindfulness. If it's just to make you go back to work and work for the, horrible boss, work even harder and give even more trapped in the rat race, then what's the point? Just be mindful of your depression, just carry on anyway. Then, then what's the point? Something's missing there, the purpose of what we're doing and whether it's conducive to our well-being or not, and also the ethical aspect of the path. But it can be a way in for some people, nevertheless. And then we have this thing called secular Buddhism, which really should be just called secular something. But it's not Buddhism, it's not the teachings of the Buddha. Because again, they take out things like karma and rebirth, which is an aspect of right view. So without right view, how can we say it's any different from any other religion? I mean, basically, where is the difference between what the Buddha taught and what anyone else taught? Right view is the Buddha's contribution. Ajahn Brahm will say it's jhanas. I would probably not disagree, but I think even more than that, it's right view. Because he's the only person, the Buddha was the only person saying there is nothing permanent. Everything is subject to suffering, subject to change. And there's nothing that can be taken as a self. Every other religion says that most things are not self, but something is. Like ultimate consciousness is the real you. That's who you really are. And even some monastics in England, famous senior monks, say consciousness is who you are, which is so disappointing because the Buddha said consciousness is not you, yours, not a self. Refined consciousness, gross consciousness, any kind of consciousness, far or near, is not me, not mine, not a self. So unfortunately that message seems to be getting lost. And it has been, I don't know, is teaching more difficult, if that's what you mean? Probably it's harder to get big numbers, but the people who like to listen to the suttas and who like the way that I teach and that Ajahn Brahm teach are very devoted to us. So we have a very loyal support network, but it's small, much, much smaller than you'd expect. Yeah. And discrimination from the majority in terms of, I guess, bhikkhuni ordination, certainly I felt incredibly marginalized, incredibly alone, very... It's hard to explain how it is as a member of the Sangha. You leave the lay life and you join a Sangha because you need, every human being in the world needs relationships and networks and social community. You need to be part of a society, part of a community in order to live, right? And when you renounce and live the monastic life, you're not really part of the lay world anymore. So you need a Sangha in order to live, in order to be supported, in order for people to understand what you're doing, in order for your life to make sense to you and to others, right? And to feel that it has meaning. So when you leave that and you're all alone in the lay world, it starts to be very strange. And you start to wonder why you're doing what you are and whether it matters to anyone. And you don't have anyone else that's in the same situation who can understand. So this has been very hard. And because the Sanghas on the whole are not supporting bhikkhuni ordination, although some of them might have been friendly one-to-one, I haven't wanted to go there because if I hear that we're not really welcome, it makes it even harder. So I haven't wanted to invite any anti-bhikkhuni sentiment into my life. I've had to keep very strong and very focused. So in that sense, yeah, it's been hard. And I think certainly there's discrimination in a country that doesn't recognise bhikkhuni ordination, right? Fortunately for us, we have a very nice bhikkhu sangha in Oxford. And that's one reason I chose to stay in Oxford. It's a big reason, actually. First of all, I started with a rented place in Oxford, so I knew a few people there. But there was a very beautiful monk called Venerable Dhammasami. Do you know of him? He's a monk from Myanmar, and he has a university, like International Buddhist University there. And he's quite a visionary, trying to bring around a kind of revival in the monastic education system. So it's much more analytical, it's much more collaborative. It's like not a top-down model anymore. And so he has been in Oxford and he has his monks in Oxford and they're very supportive of bhikkhunis, so it's amazing. It's just not an issue. We don't have to talk about it. We don't have to take sides. It's just not an issue. They're friendly. They're like our brothers. So it's really great. So things are getting much better now, but it's been tough for the last 9 years. Yeah. It's been really tough, but I come here every year and that's my lifeline. Ajahn Brahm's always there for me. We speak every week and he's, I have that support, so that's what's taken me through this time. Please advise how to practice relax to the max and loving kindness if my wandering mind keeps coming in every session of my meditation. Thank you. So it's not relax only if the wandering mind disappears. It's relax with the wandering mind. So it's not conditional. Relax to the max and loving kindness is not conditional. Does that make sense? So you have loving kindness whether your mind is wandering, whether it's calm, whether it's joyful, whether it's sad, you still have loving kindness. Even as a mother protects with her life her only child, the child is not always happy. The child is sometimes running around, having a tantrum. Sometimes the child's loving the mother, sometimes the child's strangling the mother, sometimes the child eats the food, sometimes he spits it out. The mother's love is the same. So in the same way, the loving kindness is there for your mind, whether it's wandering or whether it's quiet. So loving kindness is also an attitude. It's not only a state of mind that's loving. It's also a way you relate to the mind, no matter what it's like. So just try and make peace with your wandering mind. Let it be there. It's almost like it's in the background, just like a child. Chat, chat, chat. It's okay, I just relax. I'm just going to pretend I'm asleep. Sometimes I do that if I'm in a noisy place, if the noise is external. You can do it internal too. I'm just like, okay, well, there's so much noise, I can't sleep, so I'll pretend to be asleep. Once I was pretending I'm just dead. I'm just pretending to be dead. Not in a, don't do this if you've got like dark thoughts, okay? This is like if you're fine and it's a game and you're just pretending, like pretending to be as quiet as you can. And then it's amazing, you start to actually be more quiet. So just see if you can kind of connect with that deeper part of the mind. You don't have to worry too much about the thoughts. They'll just vanish. You won't even notice they've gone. And then suddenly you'll be like, wow, I wasn't thinking for the last part of that meditation. And then the mind gets used to that and starts to happen more and more. So don't make a problem out of these things. Ooh, that's such neat writing. Wow, it's like print. My eyes are a bit old, so. I'm so glad to have joined this retreat. Q&A is my favourite part of the session. Thank you for your kindfulness. I don't deserve that at all, that's for Ajahn Brahm. But I think I'll give him that message because that's even more samadhi writing than his. That's amazing. Beautiful. I want to ask a question to the non. I guess that's me. The non. How do you know that your path is to become a non? Sometimes we do have that wish. How do we know it's the right thing to do? Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I think I've already addressed this to some extent. For me, it became very obvious, although I didn't know if there'd be an opportunity, but I knew it was all I wanted to do. And it was sometimes a little bit... it's like it was inspiring and also a little bit anxiety producing because it's like, I need to renounce. It was like a sense of urgency, but there was no opportunity for a long time. So I just kept practicing. I just kept practicing, enjoying my practice, serving a lot, meditating a lot, and keeping my eyes and ears open, listening for the opportunity. And eventually the opportunity came, and I was literally jumping up and down when someone told me there was this teacher in Burma. I was literally just, oh my goodness, I was just so excited. And I went there the very next year, the very next occasion that I could. So sometimes you have that wish. How do you know it's the right thing to do? It's not that there's a right or a wrong, it's more whether or not renunciation helps you deepen your practice. So the best thing to do is to try living in a monastery for some time, or try being on retreat for longer, try and like renounce a little bit more in your everyday life and see how it affects you. If it becomes too tight, then you're renouncing too much. If it feels good, if you prefer kind of not going out with your friends in the evening and staying home to meditate, or not watching TV, or I don't know, you don't really watch TV anymore, right? It's like computer stuff, handy, I don't know what you call it. Then you're inclining in that way. But one thing is that some people come to monastic life kind of wanting to escape from the troubles in their life, and it's not a strong enough reason. You need a real kind of calling to monastic life itself, not just a kind of wanting to get away from a difficult life or from suffering, because sometimes we have to be able to live within a difficult life and work within that and learn to be well adjusted and well integrated in that first. So it's good if you can actually learn to handle difficult relationships, have a good livelihood, you've tried all those things, you've maybe even had a happy marriage, and still it's not enough. Still it's just not enough. And there's something more that you want. And then you start spending time in different monasteries and see where you connect. Sometimes it's not a matter of whether, it's the right thing to do. Sometimes it's a matter of whether there's an opportunity. So wait to see if things line up. It's not easy. Like I say, it took me 10 years to find the first opportunity. 10 years of dedicated practice, living in India and Nepal, not doing anything else. Only a bit of travelling jobs here and there. But, really keeping my path wide open for ordination. And it still took a long time. It's getting easier now, but it's a journey. So start the journey and see where it takes you. Yeah. You can be enlightened as a layperson too. So it's important to say that. Okay. Any tips on how to practice meditation routinely as we arrive home soon? Usually what happens is the first, second week after retreat is meditation still strong, 2 weeks after, we tend to lose the motivation or even forget sometimes. Help! Thank you. That's okay. I know that's not the answer you want, but it's kind of normal. It is quite normal that you won't have the same momentum as you have on retreat. And I think it's important to say that, because otherwise, you're just fighting the impossible. You're trying to be kind of superhuman. Remember, this path is entirely conditioned. Your so-called success in meditation is nothing to do with you, it's to do with the conditions. So if you don't have supportive conditions, of course the meditation won't be as strong. But there are some conditions you can put into place to help you. And one of those might be to listen to guided meditations. One of them might be to just have no expectation about your meditation, but commit to it anyway. Even if you feel it's getting nowhere, you're getting no peace, all you're doing is watching the day's events go round and round your head, it doesn't matter. That nice little tip Ajahn Brahm gives, check at the end of your meditation, are you feeling a little bit more peaceful or not? And most of the time you are. You are. I remember when I was doing my Indian medicine degree, between being in India and trying to find a place to ordain, I studied Indian medicine. And sometimes I was, really studying 10 hours a day, because it was a very short but very intensive degree. Usually it's 5.5 years, and I did it in like 3 years, and it was just tons and tons of memory work. And I just have chattering in my mind. But I was just staying present, staying mindful, like being peaceful with it, trusting the practice. And really, it was like a rock. It was like such a strong foundation for me to do really well in the degree and for me to keep my practice. It was like I didn't really waver. So then when I went to retreat, of course, I started where I left off. There was no regress, actually. So sometimes it seems like just maintenance, but actually it's important. It's important to do. Listen to talks, listen to guided meditations. The other really important thing is to have meditation buddies. Can you collect a group of people around you? Maybe people from this retreat. Some of you are from Indonesia. How many are from Indonesia? And how many from Hong Kong? Most? About similar, half-half? Yeah. So maybe you can somebody who has a big enough room, even if it's just a small room, you can have 4 or 5 people in there. You can just have like weekly meditation sits. This is excellent. Even if it's just half an hour, and then afterwards you talk about anything you want. You talk about the practice, talk about the Dhamma, just talk about your week. And that can be really, really helpful, because it holds you accountable and it makes you feel you're not alone. So this is another really good way to practice. And then remember, you can find time in the day to practice without a long session. So one of the things I always advise is to do some metta meditation first thing in the morning and last thing at night. Yeah, you wake up in the morning, instead of having thoughts about, oh, what have I got to do today? I don't really want to get up. Just start saying to yourself, may I be happy? May I be peaceful? May this day go well. May everyone I meet today be happy and well. May I be of some benefit to the people I meet. Whatever you want to say, may I be safe. May the people I meet be safe. Whatever you want to say, but put a really good intention into your day. And do that for 5 minutes. And then the same thing at the end of the day, whatever merit you've made, you can reflect on all the good things you've done. You can think of all beings. May all beings be benefited. May all beings be happy. May they not suffer. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I not suffer. May I sleep deeply. Whatever you want, be creative, but continually practice to develop wholesome thoughts. This will be really, really helpful. And you'll find they just pop up throughout the day more often than they used to. So that's really good. How do you bring more joy to a nimitta or to our meditation? To Venerable Canda, it feels unreal seeing you in person after watching all your YouTube videos. Actually, the YouTube videos were unreal. This is real, is it? Maybe? That's sweet. Hope you have a great rains retreat. Thank you so much. That's really kind. Oh, yeah. It's really strange for me, because I'm not, to me, a known person. I'm just normal. Like, I do normal things like brush my teeth and stuff. And then nowadays I'm on YouTube and people are like, oh, hi, hi, and they know me, and I'm like, I don't know you, but it's like, oh, hi. But the nice thing is, even though I don't know you, it feels like friendship because there's some kind of connection, even just through the YouTube. It's amazing, really, how the Dhamma works. So the way to bring more joy to a nimitta or to the meditation, there's different ways. And with the nimittas, it's mostly what you've done before. Once you're in that stage, it's a bit too late to really bring more joy to it, other than through letting go more, relaxing more and not interfering, not getting involved. Because it's the getting involved that kind of tends to make it run away or just kind of interferes with the process. So the best way to bring joy to it at that point is to start to be really peaceful, really, really passive. If there is a beautiful place in the nimitta, then of course you can really appreciate it with eyes of loving kindness, just really have a lot of appreciation for whatever's beautiful about it, and that beauty will grow. But other than that, I think to bring more joy to the meditation or pre-nimitta is to do a lot of loving kindness practice. And I really want to emphasize this. It's a massive part of my practice. I think Ajahn Brahm has a natural sense of loving kindness through deep practice. You know, he had deep practice even as a layperson, so he had this sense of unconditional, like the deep stages of meditation are like perfect peace, unconditional love. So the two are kind of almost the same. So that would have been very natural for him, but I think it's really good to practice lots of loving kindness. The joy comes more quickly with loving kindness meditation than it tends to come with breath meditation. It will come with breath meditation, but it tends to take a bit longer. It's more like the peace comes first, and then the energy starts to build from that peace, and then the joy comes later on. But with loving kindness, it comes more quickly. So that can be a very beautiful way into breath meditation, or just into more joy in your life. And even further back than that, in your daily life, again, practice virtue. And I don't mean keep the precepts, I mean actively do good, actively be kind, actively say beautiful, encouraging things to other people that uplift them, that encourage them, that soothe them when they're struggling. You know, actively protect life. You know, actually move the little creature if you can away from the pavement or away from the bike. Just do whatever you can to help beings in this world. It's really, really difficult. Give charity, not only to monastics, not only to monasteries, but also to, you know, relief aid or charities that do, you know, a lot of help around the world. And then you don't feel so helpless, then you feel good. But you have to reflect on it at the end of the day. Yeah, that's called Chaganusati. You can reflect on it at any time, you know, at the end of your meditation, but you can also reflect on it every day, and then you'll remember. Make a gratitude journal or something like this, or a journal where you write down all the good things you've done. And I heard about a Sri Lankan man, I think it was, who kept a book like this of all the good things he'd done and all the nice things other people had done or said or whatever. And while he was dying, he had someone read it out to him. Imagine how much happiness that gave. Yeah, so keep a book. And that will balance your perception of the world, you know, like the question that came earlier. There is a lot of terrible, frightening things happening, but there's also a whole lot of good. So focus on the good things, even if they're small, because they really accumulate. And they change your view of the world. And then, yeah, the difficulties are there. We don't deny it, but you're more resourced, actually, to find a solution, to act, to be an ally, you know, to speak out against injustice, and just to keep your own head above the water. So here, these 2 days, I broke one of my precepts. I felt terrible, honestly, and it makes me feel like my meditation is also getting worse. What should I do to rectify my mistake? Anumodana. So the first thing you should do is write this message. So well done, you've done that, you've already confessed. If that's not enough, you can confess to me or to Ajahn Brahm more detail, but we'll just forgive you straight away. So to skip that process, if you're shy or whatever, you just forgive yourself. Because it's not that you've broken the precept, it's not the fact that you broke the precept that has made your meditation difficult, it's the guilt. You broke the precept once, and that's over. That's gone. So see if you can forgive yourself. Understand what led to it. Understand that it was conditioned. There were causes that led to it, and those causes have passed. You can make a determination to try better next time, but then forgive yourself. Think about how you'd feel if your best friend had done that thing, or if another retreatant had done that thing. What would you say to them? You'd probably say it's okay, everybody makes mistakes. If you could all talk together, you'd probably find other people broken precepts too. So really don't worry. It's the guilt that's the problem. You're beating yourself up. So what was it Ajahn Brahm said yesterday? 50 strokes of? All right. If you haven't got a cat, there's some really big teddy bears. So it'll take you a while to stroke it 50 times, but it's maybe worth it. So see if you can do that. You're already forgiven from the Sangha. We don't even know what it was, but we know you're a really sincere person, so don't keep beating yourself up. Okay, so I've answered this one. Your personal journey which led you to being a Buddhist and a bhikkhuni. The Buddhist part was just, I only reluctantly call myself a Buddhist because I love the Buddha's teachings, but I don't think he wanted Buddhists. I don't think the Buddha called himself a Buddhist or his disciples. He taught the Dhamma. So I would say that I practice the Dhamma and I try to practice the Buddha's teachings. I have a lot of devotion to the Buddha as a teacher. So that came on gradually through the practice. And now I guess I have to say, I might as well say I'm Buddhist because I'm a Buddhist nun, so it's too much complicated, isn't it, to explain that. So yeah, I hope that the rest was answered already. Ooh, look at this. Can I know what is your source of happiness? And please share about it. Thank you. Great. Well, obviously meditation is a big source of happiness, right? Obviously the practice, the Dhamma, the teachings. But I have new sources of happiness now that are kind of counterintuitive. I'll tell you the most counterintuitive at the end but maybe I'll just tell you, I saw a really interesting little philosophical documentary, very short, that made sense of it for me. And it's called, there's an actual philosophical concept called the freedom in responsibility. And I was like, that is what it is. I made this commitment to working on this project to start a monastery in England 9 years ago, and it's been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And if you had asked me then, if you knew how hard it would be, would you do it? I'd have said, no way. But I'm so happy that I didn't know how hard it would be because it's been the most rewarding thing I've done, other than find the Dhamma, practice the Dhamma. This is the most rewarding thing I've done. And yeah, freedom and responsibility means when you commit to something, when you dedicate your life to something and that thing has real deep meaning for you, you lose this, your energy is no longer dispersed into, could I do this or should I have done that? Or what do I want to do next? I don't want this, I want this instead. And all that wanting just kind of goes away because you've already made a decision. And to me, that's a deepening of renunciation. Sometimes people think renouncing as a nun means you meditate all the time or you have this kind of lifestyle or that kind of lifestyle. Actually, it means renouncing your lifestyle, your choice around what's going to happen next. And so, of course, you're in the Dhamma, so whatever happens is a good thing. You serve the Dhamma. But your choice around how you serve the Dhamma, where you serve the Dhamma, who you live with, that is very much diminished. And that gives a certain freedom because you have to start working with what you've got. You can't get out of it anymore, and you have to grow on the job. And I heard Ajahn Brahm say something like this yesterday, I think, working with what you've got, making meaning out of what you've got. What did he say? You make the meaning does not make you. That's what he said this morning. You make the meaning, you give the meaning to your life. And so this has been a massive source of happiness for me because it brings also unexpected rewards. And first of all, of course, it's seeing the generosity of the people that support us. This is a massive source of inspiration and happiness. I think my worldview, I know about the problems in the world. I read about it, I make sure I'm informed. There are things that deeply upset me, like racism, like fascism, like corruption in politics, like climate plundering or resource plundering. This is really sad. But my immediate world is all these incredible people I'm in front of now, you, all these incredible people I'm in front of when they come to offer dana, all the incredible women and men and gender non-binary and trans folks who come to my monastery and sit in front of me with such sincerity of aspiration, and they contribute and they work in harmony in the monastery. And it's so heartwarming, honestly. Every day, almost every day, I come down really exhausted. They can tell you this is true. And I say, well, I feel physically really tired, but I feel so inspired and happy just that I'm with you all, you know. It's a privilege to serve, and it's a privilege to be with so many good people. And now that we have a monastery, there's a great source of unexpected joy again to have 2 trainees who I feel a sense of unconditional love towards. It's really amazing. I reckon it's the next, it must be similar to like how a mother feels towards a child, but I don't assume that role. It is really not the same. I'm not somebody who thinks that my trainees are little and they need a mother and they need mothering, you know, not at all. I feel like they're my friends and I want to empower them, and they're strong, mature women. But I feel a sense of like, it's my job and responsibility and privilege to nurture them in whatever way I can. And it's like, I've got the role of like just being able to facilitate their growth to some extent. Just have a little hand in that, you know, make sure there's enough food and place to stay and teach, and give them a place that's safe, that they feel accepted and they can grow. And just watching them grow, it like makes me want to cry, because it's so inspiring to feel I can be part of that, you know. It's really beautiful. And I just feel this like sense of, yeah, unconditional love that has a channel. Because I think, you know, for monastics, we are human beings and we need relationship. And we have relationship that's much purer than you have in the world. But sometimes it's like there's nowhere, I mean, you give it in a wide way, but I can also understand why Ajahn Brahm really nurtures his monks and his nuns, right? Because it gives him so much joy to see us grow. And I must say it was really beautiful when he came to visit this time, because he was so proud of me. Like I see his eyes shining with this like proud father thing, and it was so sweet. And then the next morning, after he met my Anagarikas, and you know, we'd had a meeting the evening before, he came downstairs. He said, "I feel like a grandpa." It was so sweet. It was so sweet. So this is kind of what gives me a lot of joy at this time, and just knowing that I have been able to pay back a debt of gratitude to Ajahn Brahm. And my next one, I was saying, has to be full enlightenment, you know, because I've done the monastery. We'll see what happens next. I mean, hopefully it's successful and people ordain. But, you know, the next really big one would be enlightenment, because that's what he wants for all of us. So that gives me a lot of joy, serving in the Dhamma. Thanks for asking, because it makes me so happy to talk about what makes me happy. And I hope that can help you to get inspired about what makes you happy too. Okay. What to do with people who constantly get angry and are so scary that I don't dare to advise them? Probably don't advise them, honestly. Probably let someone else do that. And, you know, sometimes it's really difficult, but people are in a very angry mood and they are unwilling to listen to any feedback. And you can see what might be good for them, but they're not going to hear you. And so at that point, you just have to accept that this person's going to go the way they go. I mean, there might be ways around it. There might be ways in through other people or through systems. It might be that they're at work creating a havoc, and you can, you know, tell your superiors about it, try to get some support. You might have colleagues that you can tell and that you can kind of get support from. It's important to, you know, be supported in this. But sometimes it might be that that person's just scary because, you know, they remind you of someone else who scared you before. And maybe they're not so bad. Sometimes people seem kind of very angry, but they're actually all talk, if you know what I mean. They speak loudly, maybe they even seem to shout, but they're actually not that scary after all. But if you're scared, then respect that. And don't get too close. Just keep a little bit of distance for now. Ajahn Brahm always says, you know, you can love the tiger from a distance. right? You're not going to send metta to the tiger by kind of stroking it on the nose, I hope. You're going to send metta to the tiger like in the forest over there. So, yeah, just respect yourself and don't advise people who cannot be advised. The Buddha actually said that, you know, it would be troublesome even for him to advise certain people who can't take feedback. So if you've tried before and all you get is more anger and more objection and counter-reproval and, well, you're like this, then that's not advisable to really try. So unfortunately, sometimes we can't do very much, but we can just have compassion and wish them well and think thoughts of love and kindness about them, even when you're not with them. And you might actually find that you feel more confident to see them and they start to feel less afraid themselves. Because often people are scary and angry because they themselves are scared. So when you have a heart of loving kindness, you start to have a positive effect on them. So that would be my advice. All right. So we have come to the end of the question. Oh, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much. It's very sweet of you. And thank you for your wonderful questions. Excellent.